Today, we're announcing Alpamayo, the world's first thinking, reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. Alpamayo is trained end-to-end, literally from camera in to actuation out.
Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to Marilyn T. Thank you for using my Tesla referral link, and congratulations on your new Tesla. So listen, before I even get into this, let me be clear. I really am rooting for autonomy from any and all companies. I want the roads to be safer as fast as possible, and I want the less fortunate and the disabled to get mobility back. I'm confident we will all make plenty of money from Tesla stock over the next decade. We just have to remember the market is so big that multiple players can win here for the next 5 to 10 years easily, before we even start to think about saturation or the addressable market becoming limited. But I will say it's been somewhat comical to watch everybody react to NVIDIA's demo video without knowing at all what it is or what the deployment of this technology might actually look like in the real world. If you're thinking, why did Jensen lie, saying they're bringing the world's first thinking, reasoning autonomous vehicle to market? Well, per the usual, the answer is in the semantics. NVIDIA's Alpamayo is technically a family of VLA models, vision, language, action. VLA models have vision, so they see the world with cameras and sensors, but it's the language part that differentiates NVIDIA's approach to what Tesla has primarily been doing to date. In short, the model incorporating language is a model that's trained to think in step-by-step thoughts just like a human would. This is what they mean when they say chain of thought reasoning. So an AV pulling up at a traffic light that's not working would actually think like a human, saying the traffic light isn't working, which means now I have to treat it like a four-way stop. Whereas Tesla's approach, the end-to-end model, just goes from seeing the image and the situations and then directly to an output, and it's solely based on patterns from millions of previous examples. But as we've talked about in the past, one of the shortcomings with this approach is that it's kind of a black box, meaning Tesla and the engineers don't always know exactly why FSD chooses certain behaviors. Whereas with VLA models, the engineers can actually see what the car was thinking and why it made certain decisions. Just know both approaches have pros and cons. There's not one that's better than the other. It really depends, and a lot of these models are moving to a hybrid approach anyway. So NVIDIA's new Alpamayo is not really even a product. It's still just an open portfolio of different models and tools and data that can help accelerate AV innovation. So as we've said, it's still just a toolkit. It is not a turnkey solution. Meaning every single OEM is going to have to look at all of these different tools and decide which ones they want to use, how they want to use them, how they want to integrate them, what SAE levels of autonomy they want to try to target on which particular vehicles, and so on. They have to decide how much engineering talent will they be able to dedicate to integrating all of these tools and developing their own models. Then they'll have to decide how much responsibility they want to take and where the liability ultimately will fall. And as we all know, these companies are super risk averse. And it's a fair question, do we really think all of Legacy Auto just has the engineering talent standing by waiting to put these tools to good use? I mean, most of these companies have outsourced simpler things like regular in-car software and those integrations in their vehicles, so how capable will their OTA updates actually be if they use these NVIDIA tools? And NVIDIA has said things that seem simple, like driver profiles, would need to be decided on and developed by the OEM. I mean, look at this. This is a blog direct from NVIDIA. They said this design, in partnership with Mercedes, may enable OTA updates of future upgrades and new features. So no, it's not a guarantee that this is just going to get better like how Tesla is doing it, because Mercedes and all other legacy auto companies will still be responsible for the software to carry out these OTA updates. And even if these companies decide to take the risk and spend the millions of dollars and find the engineers to successfully integrate all of this technology, they then still have to validate it and go through extensive massive testing before they can release it to the public. So I know I've explained some of this before, but without fail, every time we see an announcement like this, people for whatever reason think that, oh, all of these companies can just go buy this product off the shelf and then within a few weeks they're going to have this solution in the market. But that could not be further from the truth, and outside of this one product, the Mercedes CLA, we have no idea. It's still likely going to be 3 to 5 years before any other legacy OEM starts to walk down this path and potentially get something into the market. And even this one product, the CLA, isn't expected to have this tech available until the end of this year, which I would say isn't going to happen until 2027 because this is an industry of over-promising and under-delivering. And yes, to be fair, Tesla is guilty of this as well. Mostly because of Elon, but they're one and the same. And we should all know better. Many of you have followed the channel for years, and we've seen dozens of company announcements and promises only to never actually come to fruition. And many of those promises were just for making EVs or doing software updates, which is easy relative to actually solving the long tail of generalized unsupervised autonomy. And it's just a fact that these tools from NVIDIA, while very helpful for the uninitiated legacy OEM, are not going to move the needle when it comes to solving that last 1%. And there are other differences it's important to highlight. It's true, this Alpamayo solution is primarily an end-to-end platform. However, it is still partially a classical stack as well, meaning they're still doing human-driven annotation of different things in the scenes, and they're still using that rules-based logic to help with things like safety and how they run their simulations. And as you might expect, some of this manual code is being used as a ground source of truth for any of the predictions made by the neural net, which come from the end-to-end part of the stack. But as we know, Tesla has taken the fully end-to-end approach, eliminating all of the manual code. So despite all of the marketing and headlines and chatter right now, Alpamayo is still pretty dependent, as far as I can tell, on manual code throughout the stack. But of course, the biggest questions remain: how will it perform in the real world? Because all of this behind the scenes stuff won't ultimately matter. Unless, of course, it degrades the ultimate performance of the system and or adds a level of complexity that makes the compute requirements greater, which ultimately would take the efficiency lower. But that's not even the biggest problem I wanted to point out with all of this. So not to point the finger at Phil, because this post was overall very good and worth a read. But there's a very common talking point that many people in the Tesla space are parroting right now, and it's this one. NVIDIA explicitly validates Tesla's vision-only approach. And to some degree, that's absolutely true. This level 2++ solution that Mercedes is trying to bring out with the CLA using NVIDIA's Alpamayo is going to be a suite of 10 cameras on the outside of the car, 5 radars, and then 12 ultrasonics, but those are just for parking. So that's the SAE Level 2++ stack. It has no LiDAR and does not rely on HD maps. But to be clear, this solution is only for Level 2. This is not NVIDIA's approach to Level 3, 4, or above.
For the Level 3 and Level 4, our platforms will also use LiDAR as well. LiDAR platforms.
But from our perspective, 2++ system, we are mostly basically camera plus radar approach. We are pretty comfortable about where we are. And for L3, because of the full sensor redundancy requirement, we do believe that adding additional sensor modality is very important, but there will be LiDAR in it for L4. We believe sensor diversity and sensor redundancy is critical and essential for L3 and L4.
So there you have it, an NVIDIA engineer as of this week saying that they will use LiDAR for Level 3 and 4. So yes, Alpamayo confirms that vision only is a low-cost, scalable approach, one that is absolutely worth pursuing, but clearly even NVIDIA still thinks that to get to unsupervised, you still need LiDAR, which is why I would push back and say that no, this announcement doesn't really validate Tesla's vision-only approach. And I would go further and say that if you still need proof that Tesla's approach is the right way, then I just think you haven't been paying close enough attention. Maybe you haven't tried FSD 14. Maybe you haven't been privy to all of the progress over the last few years. Maybe you're not familiar with all of the AI talent that Tesla has in-house. And don't forget, NVIDIA is a company that primarily sells chips, as Phil astutely pointed out. So they're just putting as many tools and resources out there to try to draw in as many legacy OEMs as possible so they will ultimately buy more NVIDIA chips. But to think that NVIDIA is some sort of specialist when it comes to solving for unsupervised FSD is super foolish because it's not their primary focus. Tesla, on the other hand, has been laser focused on this now for years. So my point is, Tesla doesn't need validation. It's already on the verge of launching unsupervised in Austin probably sometime this month, with cameras only. So if that's not enough proof, then I don't know what more you would need. So again, overall, a great post from Phil. I don't mean to pick on him, but his post was getting a lot of traction, and so I just wanted to add that one counterpoint. And it's a ridiculous example, but to make the point, Usain Bolt would not go to Joe Biden to learn how to sprint. So Tesla doesn't need to be looking around at other companies that don't specialize in FSD to see what they're doing to determine if their own approach is the right one. And as Elon said on the matter, I'm not losing any sleep about this, and I genuinely hope they succeed. I'm guessing a lot of you won't remember that Tesla used to offer a 7-day money-back guarantee when buying a Tesla vehicle. This was back around 2019, and it didn't last more than a few months, but right here on the Tesla blog. 7 days or 1,000 miles for a full refund. Quite literally, you could buy a Tesla, drive several hundred miles for a weekend road trip with friends, and return it for free. So a pretty awesome policy. And I'm guessing most of you don't know about Exter's 100-day money-back guarantee either. So you have zero risk in trying any of their extensive high-quality products. I've shown the weighted dips and pull-ups with kettlebells in the Exter backpack. You've seen the smart wallets with the card fan feature, the tracker tags I use so I never lose a bag when traveling again, the Apple AirTag holders on the wallet so I never misplace my wallet again, and new releases like the MagSafe Card Holder Pro for an even more streamlined carry setup, and the travel vacuum kit that I took to Pinehurst last year, which was perfect for keeping my dirty clothes separate coming home and saving space going both ways, as I prefer to pack as light as possible. If you're newer to the channel, checking out sponsors is one of the best ways to support Electrified, and Exter's running a New Year's sale right now, so you can get up to 48% off through January 28th this year, and if you use code Electrified20 at checkout, you can get another 20% off on top of the sale. And as that video from Everyday Chris showed, this solution is still not exiting parking spots on its own. It's not yet reacting to emergency vehicles. It's still not available to use on Lombard Street in San Francisco, the very famous super windy road. So it's very much still an early build beta situation. However, with all of that said, let's give some credit where it's due, because even in this very early build, it's still pulling off maneuvers like this. I didn't use the original audio because of copyright situations, but that was a very impressive handling of that situation. And Alpamayo will have some other pretty cool features that Tesla does not have.
We can take over the wheel at any time and collaborate with the software. We can nudge into this oncoming lane and then come back into this lane, let go of the wheel. All the time, the software was still engaged.
So drivers will have the ability to take over without disengaging the system. Elon commented on this saying the actual time from when FSD sort of works to where it's much safer than a human is several years. The legacy car companies won't design the cameras and AI computers into their cars at scale until several years after that. So this is maybe a competitive pressure on Tesla in 5 or 6 years, but probably longer. Elon also said this Alpamayo approach is just exactly what Tesla is doing. What they will find is it's easy to get to 99% and then super hard to solve the long tail of the distribution. And Ashok added, the long tail is so long that most people can't grasp it. So what they're saying is it's relatively easy to be decent at autonomy with how fast AI and silicon is accelerating. But it's still that last 1% that makes all the difference, and it's that can unlock unsupervised, and that needs to be solved in a cost-effective way. And the only way to solve the long tail is with real-world data. You cannot go the simulated data route only. And we've covered reasons in the past why that is. And we have to remember legacy OEMs don't have cameras all over their cars sending data back to these massive compute clusters. So yeah, NVIDIA has tools that can help these OEMs with simulations so they don't have to develop those in-house. But again, if you don't have billions of miles of real-world data to ground all of that in truth and reality, and to actually know what the true edge cases are in the real world, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And again, we have no idea what the cost of any of this will be. Is it going to be built into the CLA? Will it be a monthly or an annual fee? How much is Mercedes going to have to pay to NVIDIA? Then there's the question, will legacy automakers put this technology on gas or hybrid cars, since most of them are struggling mightily to sell EVs at scale? Because if they want to hit scale here, as it stands now, they would have to do that, but that would of course lock them into outdated technology. And this first product, the Mercedes CLA, is fully electric, but how many of those will Mercedes actually sell? And again, outside of this one vehicle, that's it. That's all we have for now. So as we've said, we can be sure it's going to take legacy auto another 3 to 5 years to start using these tools and to integrate the hardware into its cars and to develop the software needed to execute OTA updates and to decide what levels it wants to aim for and to create their own models and to validate the models and train the models before it can actually be sold to the public. And Pierre Ferragu commented about CES this week, saying it's the great validation chamber for Tesla. The signal from Vegas is loud and clear. The industry is not catching up to Tesla. It's actively validating Tesla's strategy, just with a 12-year lag. Pierre continued, NVIDIA validates the Tesla stack with Alpamayo, pivoting physical AI towards reasoning. Total vindication of FSD 13 and 14's architecture. Go-to-market will be the issue. NVIDIA provides the kitchen, the chips and the models, but legacy OEMs still have to cook. Good luck with that. So again, yes, Tesla's strategy is being validated on certain levels, but ultimately the most important, true, unsupervised, generalized autonomy has not been validated by this announcement because clearly NVIDIA still expects to use LiDAR for anything beyond level 2. And yes, the sensor fusion problem is a bit easier to deal with now than it was 5 years ago given advancements in AI. But we know LiDAR's not free, so we know what that's going to do to the overall cost profile. And factor in the margins and potential licensing from NVIDIA, and bear in mind Mercedes and these legacy auto companies don't really have plans to have a robotaxi business. All they're trying to do right now is give their customers some form of advanced driver assistance. So to think that all of these companies are just going to magically have all of these robotaxis in their own service and cleaning and wireless charging and apps and user bases and price algorithms and all of it is still very foolish in my opinion. So yes, NVIDIA's demo video was impressive. The ride-along experience from Everyday Chris was also impressive with some great clips. But this is all in the context of CES, where companies show what they have in store for the future, some of which may or may not come to fruition as expected. So respectfully, if you're concerned about this, I would just say you either A, don't understand Tesla's approach and set up well enough, or B, you don't understand NVIDIA's tools and what they are versus aren't. And further, you're overestimating Legacy Auto's ability to actually use those tools and deploy a solution successfully. Just ask yourself one question. If in 2027 we did see a handful of OEMs with a level 2++ system in the market on a handful of different vehicles, how is that actually going to change anything about what Tesla's doing and its ultimate upside? By 2027, we can be pretty confident Tesla will have thousands of robotaxis operating unsupervised with a full stack in-house camera only, and that same software available to be on millions of vehicles around the world. So until another company has a true camera only approach aiming to solve for unsupervised, with production in-house, no one else is going to compete with Tesla when it comes to cost per mile.
First of all, I think the Tesla stack is the most advanced AV stack in the world, and I think the Tesla AV operations is the most advanced in the world, and I'm fairly certain that they were already using end-to-end AI.
Yes.
And whether their AI also did reasoning or not is somewhat secondary to that first part.
So remember, Tesla's reasoning is built into the end-to-end model based on all of that imitation learning. It doesn't need that separate, explicit chain of thought reasoning.
Ours is also vision-based. Of course, we have in addition to vision, we also have radar and lidar. But otherwise, the approach is rather similar. I think Elon's approach is about as state-of-the-art as anybody knows of autonomous driving and robotics. And so it's a stack that's hard to criticize. I wouldn't criticize it. I would just encourage them to continue to do what they're doing. They're doing a great job.
There you go. If you don't want to take it from me, take it from Jensen. And what did James Douma have to say on the matter? No, this is not competition for FSD any more than LEGO releasing a space shuttle kit is competition for the Falcon 9. He just said everything we just covered a bit more eloquently. These are not ADAS systems, they're tools to help get started developing an ADAS system. Using a VLA provides a lot of development advantages, but VLAs are compute intensive and not in their simple form suitable for a production system. If companies chose to use these tools and were wildly successful, they might start fielding them in 5 years, and that could help Tesla displace the billion-plus human-driven vehicles 10 years from now. But there's no scenario in which a company building on top of this new development kit will even slightly dent Tesla's robotaxi market opportunity. And Elon just said Nvidia is providing helpful tools to the auto industry, but the industry is doing very little on their own. By the end of this year, Tesla will have spent around $10 billion cumulatively just on Nvidia hardware for training. We combine that with our own AI4 chips for processing vast amounts of video, or we would probably need to spend double that amount. Then we're making 2 million cars per year and rising, all with our dual system-on-chip AI4, 8 cameras, redundancy in steering actuation and other systems, high bandwidth communication, etc. Then we had Boston Dynamics put out a flood of material and information about its latest humanoid, Atlas. Now, one of the most fascinating things about this race will be seeing the different form factors, because Boston Dynamics, BD from here on out, is taking a very different approach than Tesla. They're not limiting Atlas to human movements, so Atlas can get up from the ground in a way that Optimus cannot. Atlas has joints that can move 360 degrees to move more efficiently than humans. BD has said Atlas was operating autonomously at the Hyundai factory, but the details about that autonomous operation were very sparse. And this demo was just a prototype version, so the final production version is going to have some changes, and then they did show the final production version here, but it was only a static display. It has 56 degrees of freedom, and it does have tactile sensing in the hands, although clearly it went with a different approach than Tesla, with 3 fingers and a thumb, more of a claw style. It can lift up to 110 pounds and reach up to 7.5 feet in the air. It's water resistant and can operate from -4 degrees to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It can operate for about 4 hours, and it has self-swappable batteries. BD does have an orbit platform, they call it, so when one robot learns a new skill, that same skill can be shared with the rest of the fleet. BD said they did start production at their headquarters in Massachusetts, and the supply for 2026 is all already allocated to Hyundai and an AI partner, which turns out to be Google's DeepMind. And while the initial units will be made in Massachusetts, they're planning for more pilot production at Hyundai facilities, and they're building a new meta plant in partnership with Hyundai to generate data and training for testing to eventually deploy tens of thousands of Atlas bots in Hyundai factories globally. And you guessed it, Hyundai is not just deploying the robots, but will be making the robots. So these two companies are building that new factory that'll be capable of 30,000 Atlas robots a year by 2028, but the exact location is not known for sure, although indications right now are that it'll be in Georgia. But here's the thing, Hyundai is saying now that these robots won't be handling assembly tasks until 2030, and by 2028, the plan is only for part sequencing, so getting components ready for assembly lines. And there was no mention of production plans for Atlas in Korea. It will all be in the US for now. BD also released this CGI video showing that Atlas is 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighs 198 pounds, and they showed some examples of what it might do in Hyundai factories in the future. And BD having DeepMind as a customer is so that they can try to increase the cognitive abilities of Atlas in the years to come. And the word is other new customers will follow in 2027. Here's what I'll say. I like how BD has laid out a clear path to market. It's starting with an industrial use case, with Hyundai starting in the auto sector, which really should surprise no one as BD is private and majority owned by Hyundai, as they own over 80% of the company. BD executives have said they're open to an IPO, but there's nothing material about that, and I would not expect one anytime soon. Even if they did, Hyundai would likely have to agree to a spin-off of a portion of BD, as I'm guessing Hyundai will want to keep over 50% ownership to maintain control. And of course, we still have no word on the cost of an Atlas robot, and given this is effectively Hyundai making robots for itself using BD's tech, we may not find out the cost for a long time. And it really is just way too early to make dogmatic statements, but I think it's important to point out a few things. Number one is the hand. We know Tesla is playing the long, generalized game here. Elon has been talking about things like surgery and healthcare, so Tesla is taking the time to tackle the hardest engineering problem for humanoids, which is the hand. So it's true that Tesla's solution will be over-engineered for simpler factory tasks, but Tesla is not racing to get to market. It's racing to build a general-purpose humanoid. It's just like Tesla was never focused on level 3 self-driving. It's always been racing to level 5 with tunnel vision. And as we've said before, who gets to market first doesn't matter. Figure has a few robots doing some level of pick-and-place work at BMW, but other than validating this is where we're headed, that hasn't really changed anything. But the truth is that multiple companies can win in massive ways in the world for the next decade when it comes to humanoids. So BD and Figure and Chinese companies could all have real products in the market and ship tens of thousands a year, and it wouldn't change a thing for Tesla's earnings potential. And obviously, BD's choice of its hand is going to have some limitations, but those limitations won't be run up on for a few years at the very earliest. But at some point, yes, if nothing changes, that version is never going to be performing surgery. But you could just as easily argue that Optimus won't be doing that either for decades to come. Tesla's building a production line for 1 million units a year, whereas Hyundai and BD are planning 30,000 units a year by 2028. Boston Dynamics put out a blog post and they said the robot Atlas can be controlled in 3 different ways: autonomous mode, teleoperated, or by using a tablet steering interface. It has safety features including human detection and fenceless guarding, and it can be integrated into workflows using barcode scanners or RFID. The company also revealed that Hyundai Mobis will supply the actuators for Atlas, and the two organizations will work together to build a highly reliable component supply chain and accelerate the pace of actuator development and production. So this really is Tesla versus Hyundai in a sense. Who's going to spin up the supply chains and incorporate AI most effectively? And if you've been following along for a few years, I don't even think this should be an argument. And further, the hardware designs are one thing, but for any company to deploy millions, they will need excellent general purpose software. And as far as I can see, there's no one close to Tesla in that regard. Fundamentally, robotics intelligence is really just a perception and decision-making problem where high-quality data volume directly correlates with better performance. And Tesla has a car fleet generating billions of real-world miles every year, which is helping to build precise world models and object recognition and path planning in uncertain environments that is all transferring to be used directly one-to-one for Optimus. Atlas, on the other hand, has to date been a research and development company primarily stuck in the lab. Tesla has custom silicon in Optimus, and we don't know what Atlas will have. Atlas is also in the process of shifting from hydraulic to fully electric, which is going to bring complexity and its challenges. And I know there's something in human nature that loves comparisons and competitions, but once again, if you're doubting Tesla's upside because of this announcement, I think that's very misguided and an extreme overreaction. Think about it like this: even if Boston Dynamics ships 50,000 robots by 2028, hint hint, it won't, how would that hurt Tesla's earnings potential? We're heading toward a world with billions of humanoid robots, and you're panicking because a company might ship 0.0005% of that? It just doesn't make any logical sense. And obviously, as we saw today with stock market fluctuations, that's a whole nother conversation. But fundamentally, when it comes to Tesla's earnings potential, absolutely nothing changes no matter what the competition does, again, for the next few years, whether it's for robotaxis or humanoids. We just have to keep internalizing that the addressable markets are way too big. And as I've said, I do have a feeling Tesla's Optimus demo is going to blow people's minds this year. I think the hand is going to be something out of this world, which will give Optimus a much bigger addressable market than any other humanoid. And sure, just to touch on it, Bloomberg put out a blurb yesterday saying Optimus humanoid project is facing technical and timeline challenges, despite Trump's recent praise of Elon. The robots remain hand-built, lack full dexterity, and are often remotely operated, prompting delays in factory deployment. So really, if you follow Electrified, that's not news. I've been saying all last year that there are going to be delays, and we should expect any timeline Elon says to be delayed. There's going to be so many unknown unknowns building out this full supply chain for Tesla in-house, nailing down new suppliers, figuring out how to move away from hand-built units, which again should not be a surprise. Tesla only has a prototype line right now. They're in the process of building out the actual production line. So whether this is true or not, we don't know. To what degree, we don't know. And I know there are people out there expecting 50,000 Optimus V3s to be produced this year by Tesla. But for me, if we see 5,000 units produced this year, I would consider that a win. And as someone who is very competitive and lives for competition, this will only serve to stoke the fire of the Tesla AI team. I am going to save a few stories for the next Electrified video just so this video doesn't get too long. Tesla stock closed the day at $432.96, down 4.14%, while the NDX was up 0.94%. So a sizable underperformance for Tesla stock, something we have not seen as of late. The volume was 21% above the average. Don't forget, check out extra links below. Take advantage of that 100-day money-back guarantee. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.